Hello. Hello, in this era of unprecedented technological advancement, we find ourselves at the cusp of a new frontier. The metaverse, once a vision of science fiction, is now a tangible reality with seemingly endless opportunities and intractable challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues, and distinguished guests, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Radia Fana. I'm a futurist and a creator of a theory that explores the implications of frontier technology, especially related to advanced ICT and immersive technologies. I founded and am principal at Build and Blaze, an 11-year-old consulting firm that advises public and private sector organizations on strategy, policy, and transformation in this context. Specific to our panel today, I currently work on metaverse-related standardization at International Telecommunication Union's focus group on metaverse, where I serve as vice chairman of Working Group 1, which addresses general concerns, including definitions, road mapping, and implications, and Working Group 6, addressing security, data, and the protection of personally identifiable information, PII. I am thrilled to welcome you all to the ISO annual meeting, where today we embark on an exciting journey into the realm of virtual worlds. In our panel discussion titled Beyond the Metaverse, the Future of Virtual Worlds, we will explore the evolving landscape of digital spaces that are reshaping the way we live, work, and play. Today, we will delve into several facets of these immersive environments to explore reality versus expectations, applications and enablers, current and future direction, and of course, implications. As we embark on this journey together, we have the privilege of hearing from a panel of experts who have dedicated their careers to understanding and shaping the future of virtual environments. They each bring a wealth of knowledge and insights that will undoubtedly spark thought-provoking discussions and inspire us all to envision what lies ahead. It is my pleasure to introduce Neil Robert, the CEO and co-founder of BEM Builders, an organization at the forefront of creating immersive experiences in the metaverse. He is committed to guiding physical brands into the metaverse and applies his creative leadership and passion to inspire audiences through virtual experiences. Welcome, Neil. Dr. Ian Opperman is the New South Wales government's chief data scientist and an industry professor at the University of Technology, Sydney. He heads the NSW government's AI Review Committee and Smart Places Advisory Council. Ian is a fellow of the Institute of Engineers Australia, the IEEE, and the Australian Academy of Technological Sciences and Engineering, among others. Ian, welcome. Dr. Christina Yan Zhang is a pioneer in the metaverse, starting her research on the topic in 2006. She is the CEO of the Metaverse Institute, which advises governments and UN agencies on using metaverse, AI, and digital twin technologies. She's currently a vice chair of the Working Group on Sustainability, Accessibility, and Inclusion, and a co-chair of the Task Group on Pre-Standardization for the Cityverse at the International Telecommunication Union, again, ITU's focus group on metaverse. Good to see you as always, Christina. Welcome.
Thank you.
Neil Trevitt is Vice President of Developer Ecosystems at NVIDIA, where he helps developers harness GPU acceleration. He is president of the Kronos Group and of the Metaverse Standards Forum, a venue for cooperation between standards organizations and companies. He is also active in the ISO IEC Joint Standardization Evaluation Group, which explores standardization needs and opportunities in the metaverse and related technologies. Neil, welcome to the panel.
Thank you, Maria.
Our discussions today will not only illuminate the current state of virtual worlds, but will also shed light on the standards and guidelines necessary to ensure their responsible development and widespread adoption. The International Organization for Standardization, ISO, plays a pivotal role in shaping the technological landscape, and this panel aims to explore just how ISO standards can contribute to the ethical and safe expansion of virtual worlds. Before we delve into the fascinating conversation that awaits us, I would like to express my sincerest gratitude to our distinguished panelists and engaged participants for being part of this endeavor. Your presence here today reflects your commitment to advancing our collective understanding of this digital frontier. So, let's get started with our very first question to my esteemed colleagues on the panel. What is the metaverse? Is it still relevant? I'd like to kick off with a little context for standards developing organizations, given that we are at the annual meeting of ISO. As most of you in the audience may know, the ITU, the International Telecommunication Union, the United Nations Specialized Agency for Information and Communication Technologies, recently established the first focus group on metaverse to bring together experts from around the world to shape the development of metaverse technology standardization for the benefit of all. The focus group has established 9 working groups to carry out this work in topic areas that include general concerns, the overall concept and definition of the metaverse, applications and services, architecture and infrastructure, virtual real-world integration, interoperability, security, data and personally identifiable information protection, economic, regulatory, and competition aspects, sustainability, accessibility, and inclusion, and finally, collaboration. So, Christina, you and I are members of this group. Why don't I pick on you first?
I feel very honored.
Well, welcome again. As you are aware, the focus group recently established that last working group I mentioned on collaboration to promote more active collaboration with other SDOs. With that context, Christina, what is the metaverse? Is it still relevant? Could you please also share your thoughts on the importance of SDOs collaborating to establish a shared understanding of the metaverse?
Absolutely. Thank you, Radia. Everyone knows the whole idea about the metaverse started in 1992 with Neil Stevens' novel book about Snow Crash. So the idea has been there for like 30 years, and the world's first metaverse platform is called Second Life, created in 2003 by the San Francisco-based company called Linden Lab. So that's like the world's first proper metaverse platform, 20 years already. But what's happening now is the whole metaverse idea has started to evolve into a concept where we see a whole range of technologies coming together to form the next generation of the internet, which is more immersive, interactive, and intuitive. And a lot of different things we're talking about can be demonstrated by a very interesting piece of article written by John Radoff in his 7 layers of metaverse, where you're talking all the way from the IT infrastructure, 5G, 6G semiconductor chips, all the way to like decentralized part where we're talking about blockchain, NFT, and we're talking about user interface, so different mixed reality like interface and then AI, digital twins, all the way to the creator economy, traditional gaming platforms, esports, etc. So it's a quite complicated ecosystem. And whether or not it's still relevant, I think, depending on the usability. And there has been a lot of interesting case studies in metaverse space utilized by different industry, especially I would say advanced manufacturing. There has been used a lot of digital twins, and of course, NVIDIA, Microsoft, and many quite big company has been doing a wonderful job in the space, using that to support big advanced manufacturing companies to streamline whole process. They have been used in like aerospace, using medicals and defense. So it's quite relevant. When it comes to standard, I think the most major issues everyone's talking about is interoperability. Imagine in the future if there's going to be many hundreds of different metaverse platforms, how can we ensure the interoperability of digital assets, digital properties, and digital avatars, or the 3D environments, can be taken from one platform to another platform? And I guess that's the importance where ISO, ITU, and many other important standard organizations can really come in together to help many different companies and stakeholders in the space to flourish. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. I really appreciate, I'm sure we all do, that historical context, and your insights got us off to a perfect start, especially on the importance of interoperability. So, Neil Trevitt, with apologies that I will be using last names for, because we have two Neils on the panel. Neil Trevitt, let me turn to you with the same question. What is the metaverse? I'm also curious about your view on whether the metaverse is still relevant, especially from the perspective of standardization, given your work with ISO and IEC Joint Standardization Evaluation Group. Neil?
Yeah, hey, Reddy. So this is always the first question that as soon as anyone realizes that you're working in the metaverse, it's what is the metaverse? Finally, someone who might know. And I don't think anyone really knows what the long-term roadmap for the metaverse is going to be. But I think the metaverse is a very real concept because it is, as Christine was saying, a combination of at least 5 disruptive technologies coming together at the same time. It's artificial intelligence, it's GPU processing for graphics and simulation, it's XR, augmented and virtual reality, it's Web3, all of distributed trust, and 5G, 6G, and beyond networking. You bring all of these technologies together, something disruptive is going to happen. And interoperability is key because if you want multiple technologies working together, that is kind of the definition of interoperability. And if you want interoperability, you need standards. I think many people's vision of the metaverse is somehow applications are going to be enabled to be breaking out of their individual silos and working together, and that needs more interoperability. And I think yet another common view of metaverse, it's going to be the spatial evolution of the World Wide Web. And the web is a platform that's based on open standards. So again, whichever way you come at the metaverse, interoperability is key. It's going to take a constellation of standards for multiple standards organizations, which is why coordination, like we're doing here at ISO today, is so important. And briefly, your last question, is it still relevant? I think it's a very interesting question. I think that the term has been overhyped, and we're going through the normal hype cycle. People are wondering, well, the metaverse was a big thing, and now it hasn't happened yet. It's going to take 20 years. I think there is some negative connotations too with the metaverse. A VR dystopian future, and some of the NFT blockchain negative press has reflected on the metaverse because some over-associate the metaverse with specific technologies. But this coming together of technologies, it's real. And the good news, I think, for the standardization community is although the hype may be receding back to normal levels, the elevated interest in standardization and interoperability around spatial computing hasn't seemed to decrease. That seems to have stuck. And it is a real phenomenon, which is obviously a real opportunity for everyone in the standardization space.
Thank you for that, Neil. Your thoughts, especially regarding the 5 disruptive technologies that are converging, is very useful for this discussion. So, Ian, let's bring in the aspects of society and governance to this discussion. Specifically, how do societal expectations of the metaverse compare to the actual reality of the metaverse? From that context, what would the metaverse then be, and do societal expectations factor into the way in which we're presenting it?
Thanks, Radia, and greetings from the ISO General Meeting here in Brisbane, Australia. And it's wonderful to be here and wonderful to be joining you tonight. The metaverse has gone through somewhat of a hype cycle, as some of the previous people have discussed, but it's as real as you can imagine it. One of the really important things about the metaverse is the fact that if you can do something important in a digital online environment which then persists, then you are effectively engaging in the metaverse. So one of the things we've been looking at as a government, as New South Wales government, is what happens if we start to do important things in a digital environment which then persists after you log off, which is a way of thinking about the metaverse. We've been exploring digital birth certificate. We've been exploring digital identity in New South Wales in a way which is very, very different to just simple credentialing yourself against a data asset. And we've also been exploring what happens if in an environment where you are you're engaging as a citizen or you're a customer of New South Wales government, what happens if someone introduces a controlled or restricted or prohibited element, such as a gambling device, a poker machine, or if you present yourself as an adult and you're not actually an adult, you're actually a non-adult, so you're a child or a young person. What we've been trying to do is explore how you would appropriately understand the impact, relevance, and jurisdictional boundaries around controlled elements such as gambling, smoking, or a range of other restricted activities, where your jurisdictional boundaries, this is New South Wales, this is Queensland, this is Australia, this is the US, suddenly start to dissolve if you're in an environment which just exists in a digital environment, and how you would apply jurisdictional legal frameworks and boundaries in that context. So I think the metaverse is it's not a game. It's something which is actually potentially very serious if important things enter that domain, such as your digital credentials or your digital driver's license or your digital birth certificate. And increasingly, we have to think about how laws, policies, restrictions, guidance, prohibitions apply in those environments to make it a meaningful, purposeful, and important interaction, as well as being something where you can just meet and greet friends in a sort of social context. Can we genuinely operate government in such an environment? How do we control and appropriately apply the things that we are supposed to apply in a typical jurisdictional or special context in an environment which is increasingly digital? So we think in New South Wales it's important. We think it's something we really need to take seriously, but we need to apply those guidance, restrictions, prohibitions in a way which allows people to safely and appropriately interact in that environment.
Thank you so much, Ian, especially for raising the significance of persistence and discussing implications early on from the perspective of society. Neil Robert, let's round this out with the business view, specifically applications and services. The metaverse has the potential to disrupt and or enable several industrial sectors. Of course, the gaming and entertainment industry is ground zero for immersive technology, but there are others: remote work, collaboration, education, training, commerce, real estate, healthcare, tourism, among others. How would you say expectations compare to the reality of the metaverse from the perspective of industry? How does that factor in our definition here? And are there any metaverse applications that you would highlight in particular?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so thanks for every adding value to the three other speakers. And I think everything you said, it's about one key factor is the audience. When people are saying the metaverse is dead, see how many millions of daily people connected in an immersive space happen, you understand it's not dead. If you're talking about the evolution of technology and how it will impact, look and observe how many people are daily basis using this immersive technology to do more than just gaming, and you'll understand there is a use. And everything about standardization is just to bring a frame when in a few months or years, we will be billions of people using it. You will need rules. Everything else, it's about how do we anticipate a mass usage of this metaverse. And by metaverse, we are talking about virtual worlds. I like when Neil mentioned about it's a mix of technology, immersive technology such as VR, AR, XR. I also believe that the metaverse doesn't exist yet. It's still in formation. It's still a work in progress. Currently, what happens is there are plenty of virtual worlds. Each of them brings a different use, a different technology that helps the experience to be more immersive, more engaging, to bring a solution to an issue we're facing. If we talk about NVIDIA, one of the most mind-blowing video I watched in the last 1 year, it's a digital twin of the German railway network, totally duplicated as a digital twin. And you see how it's not about gaming, but how many thousands of engineers and thousands of people working in this train industry will benefit from it. So to answer your question, the use there and the use case and the case study, there are plenty according to each industry. The only thing I will take care of is when you're talking to your kids and nephew and what we call the Gen Z or Gen Alpha, because yes, in 2023, this is the first year in life where there is more people who were born with internet than without internet. So we are talking now to a majority of people who are native of this environment.
Right.
And I always share the same, because sometimes you need to stop being theoretical and you need to talk about practical and facts. Most simple fact in my life that continue making me believe that the metaverse has a bright future. When last year, for my little brother, who's turning 11 years old this year, he was 10 last year, and offered him a pair of sneakers, and he was happy for a while. But I also offer him a skin for a virtual world, one of the most famous gaming virtual world that you probably all know. The moment I offer him the skin, he was super excited and never stopped talking to me about it for the next 2 weeks. I realized at that moment that the importance for himself in the virtual world is as important and sometimes even more important than in the physical world. When you understand this, you understand that anyone will benefit from it. If you're a brand, if you're an advertiser, if you're an institution, if you're a school, or if you target this audience, you rather start understanding and mastering the codes, because it's a different codes, it's different usage, it's different navigation, it's a different way to interact socially, because it will soon be what most of the people in the world will consider as native environments.
Fantastic, Neil. Thank you so much for bringing in the audience perspective, especially engagement, and framing our discussion in the use case, because it's all about the users eventually. So now let's talk about the current and future evolution of the metaverse. One of my favorite descriptions of the metaverse is very simply the internet you can walk into. So Neil, Trevor, given your seats at both NVIDIA and Metaverse Standards Forum, yours is an interesting perspective regarding the development of the metaverse. What could the metaverse look like? How do you see it evolving?
That's a great question too. And I think evolution is the operative word. I think it's going to be a ground up Darwinian process where a lot of experiments happen, a lot of products and services get tried, some work, some won't. And we'll find a very Darwinian process of picking what's successful and what really attracts the end users that Neil was talking about. And I think it's super hard because we're in a very complex technological environment, so many pieces coming together, some still in development, that it's very hard to create like a top-down metaverse roadmap. It's almost impossible. It's like asking someone, sitting them down in front of the Netscape browser in 1994 and asking them to imagine services like Uber or Amazon. It would be just impossible. But to Neil's point, I think you can see some of the proto-metaverses that kind of point the way to the future. Roblox and Fortnite, these very popular social platforms, that they're showing the way for user-generated content and 3D socialization. There are digital twin platforms. My own company, NVIDIA, has the Omniverse platform. Digital twins is a real thing, and it's being used right now in real industries. The video that most blew my mind over the last year was using platforms like that to actually train virtual robots in a virtual world with AI, and then taking that programming and putting them into real robots, and they absolutely behave as you have simulated.
Wow.
So I think we're going to find I think that as the technologies come together, we are going to find ways together how we're going to interact with this new spatial capability. And I think AI probably is going to be the foundational linchpin around which everything else revolves. I think probably, the metaverse is going to turn into, the user interface for AI in many respects. But it's going to be a Darwinian exploratory process.
I like the idea of the Darwinian exploratory process, because that's kind of an easy way to think about it. What does attract the end user? And I think it's interesting to make that connection with AI, because a lot of people I talked to about the metaverse ask, why not AI? Like, that's the most important thing we're dealing with right now. Why are you talking about this very uninteresting metaverse thing? So can you talk to us a little bit more, Neil, about the underlying and enabling technologies here, just while I'm with you?
Yeah, so it is a coming together of these technologies. I mean, AI is going to change the way we interact with our computing resources in a very naturalistic way. It's going to really change both how we create content. It's been the holy grail for those of us working in the 3D community for many years on how do you enable normal people like my mum. She can take photos and videos on her phone and send them to me, but she can't create 3D content. And AI, I think, is going to be the thing that unlocks the holy grail for user created content with in the spatial domain. So I think AI is key. It all is based on GPUs, both the compute and the graphics. XR is interesting. I don't know if people really want to be locked away in a VR world, disconnected from their family and their colleagues for long spaces of time. So it's actually interesting that the proto metaverses, the gaming and the digital twins, mostly are not VR. VR will be super immersive, but I think it'll be augmented reality, which is when XR truly becomes as pervasive as mobile phones.
So XR and AI are key here. Thank you so much for that. That's very, very useful as you're looking at this. Ian, as a thought leader in the digital economy, how do you see the metaverse evolving?
So it's a really interesting question. I was just sitting listening to Neil and thinking about my own parents. So metaverse cannot just be a gaming environment. As government, we're thinking about doing important things like capturing at birth a digital birth certificate and allowing you to live your life as effectively creating a digital twin of yourself, engaging with government as a building, having a digital twin of that building all the way through its life and construction, operation, and so on. But honestly, I was just sitting listening to Neil, thinking about my own circumstances with my own parents. I'm the chief data scientist for New South Wales government. My parents have never done an online transaction in their lives. And my father is about to go through a hip operation as he reaches that certain stage of life. I want him to have a digital twin of himself and his own hip as he goes through that process of hip replacement and the recovery process. What we can do is create digital twins of people, process, operations, organizations, buildings, and create an understanding of how our society operates, engages, and interacts from not just physical infrastructure, but how we engage with that physical infrastructure, how things like electricity and water and other such flows operate with those physical infrastructure, and that persist when we leave, when we go to bed at night, when we go log off and do something else. The metaverse potentially is a powerful force for good, provided we allow for the things we care most about, the things that we legally protect, the things that we want to have significance and meaning. If those things are protected, embraced, and embedded into a metaverse, it can be a really powerful interaction, which goes well beyond the simplistic ideas of just it's a game. This is how we have meetings. This is how we do stuff. So I think we can start to embed protections around the metaverse. I think we can start to embed really important issues like identity and who we are in that environment. And I think we can start to really change the way we interact with the world if we allow ourselves not only the freedom to think about this differently beyond gamification, but build in those protections such as identity.
So, Ian, with this depth of engagement, what would be the impact to digital economy, you think? Would you, for example, envision a move away from platforms that are developed and owned by platform providers to more user-owned communities?
So I'm going to say something slightly controversial. The most important thing we must not do in the 21st century is build data sets which have rows and columns where every one of us is represented in that rows and columns. We still have we have data breaches again and again and again because we think that what we need to do is bring people into a data set, and then you credential yourself against that data set, or you find yourself in that data set, or you do something against that data set. A metaverse has a different philosophy in the sense that it's a data fabric. It's a way of connecting lots of different digital sources together, where in a way where you don't create those potentially honeypot data sets where with someone who is seeking to gain a disadvantage through hacking a data set approaches a unified data set. What we can do, I think, is fundamentally rethink the way we engage with the digital world if we model it, if we link it together in a distributed way through a data fabric or through a virtual environment. I think we can start to think about doing not just the old things that we've always done in new ways. I think we have the potential to do new things in new ways because we free ourselves from the perspective that if it's digital, we collect a data set. By creating an environment where we engage in a increasingly natural digital way, we can actually start to do new things in new ways. We can use terms like data fabric in a meaningful sense. We can talk about engaging with identity and with authority, authority in the sense that we are authorized to do things in a new way. We can really start to do those new things in new ways. And so I think it's wonderful to experiment, but when it gets serious, when it impacts people's lives, when it impacts what we do, we have an opportunity to try, test, and learn, but to think differently about the way we've done things. We can start to explore them differently with the protections and assurance around the outcomes that we're actually looking for. So I'm sorry, it's a very long response to your question, but I think we're giving ourselves an opportunity to build in place protections, but to do things differently to the way we've always done them to date.
I love that. And it was a very good response, actually. I like the idea of a data fabric. And, you know, the metaverse gives us an opportunity to do things differently anyway, because this is a different evolution. I don't necessarily think of it as a revolution, but I think this is a different evolution and there's an opportunity here. So Neil, Robert, you are on the front lines, so to speak. How do you see this? Like, could you react perhaps to what Ian was saying? I think it's quite fascinating.
Yes, so as I mentioned, if we looking the perspective of the audience, you'll always develop an easy and open access to this experience, or at least that's my job. And obviously, once you compare an open world accessible from a computer or console versus a virtual experience accessible from a headset that today costs a lot of money, yes, it's still yet to be democratized. And for me, the main barrier will be this access to hardware, because currently we all admit that we don't know many people using a VR headset on daily basis at home. And what I like is you will see a lot of initiatives where at schools or in dedicated space, the experience, there is one happening in Paris right now that is fabulous for anyone passing by Paris in a coming month. It's called Éternel Notre Dame. It's a full VR experience about the history of Notre Dame, the cathedral, starting at the building of the cathedral earlier in the 11th century and all the way to the tragedy that happened in 2019. And it gave access to what tomorrow a virtual experience, no matter the challenge, if it's about cultural education, if it's religious, or if it's just for pure entertainment, could be. So I appreciate this initiative from the government. I appreciate the initiative from some schools and some also gaming store proposing this experience. But we all agree that today we start understanding the benefits of a immersive experience from a computer, from a classic device, maybe a mobile phone through AR, because it's not only the immersive technology, it's also the fact that some platforms are decentralized and it gives the property to you, the fact that the persistent behavior of the platform show that even when you leave it, it still exists. There is no end. It's a synchronous experience. So you also take advantage of being live at the same time interacting with someone. And all of this doesn't necessarily include VR. It also make it possible from an AR or a 2D screen. So that's a little bit my approach of democratizing it and facing in the same time the lack of access to a headset on individual usage.
Thank you so much, Neil, for bringing up especially the issue of democratization and accessibility. And from the perspective of hardware is really interesting because I believe that that's part of why this hasn't quite taken off as one would have expected, as Neil was talking about earlier. So Christina, let's round this up with you. You have been studying the metaverse since 2006, so you have quite a bit of time to have watched its evolution. What have you observed, and what does that say about the future evolution of the metaverse?
I think history sometimes seems to be repeating itself, so some of the unsuccessful previous trial around the metaverse is as a result of lack of interoperability. I think we all acknowledge that. And of course, another really major issue is around online safety. And perhaps when it comes to online safety, there is one really important thing we should also pay attention because the internet, when it has been inception for many decades ago, we perhaps focus a little bit too much on the clean web. That's the index web. We all globally using searching engine to access. That's only 5%. While the rest 95% is called deep web, which is not really indexed and ordinary people can't find it easy to access that. And then among that 95% deep web, there is about another 5%, which is called dark web, and it's full of criminal activities. So let's imagine when we're talking about the metaverse, it's going to be the next generation of the internet. We're only talking about 5% of the clean web, which ordinary people can see on a daily basis. What about the rest, 95%? Deep web and dark web. Maybe there needs to be some collaboration around that space to ensure the future development of metaverse is also safe. And my second point will be how we address the issue of intellectual property rights, because many of our colleagues already mentioned about the huge power of generative AI to allow text into image, videos, 3D environments, videos, etc., which are hugely powerful because they become the building block to fast track the whole development of metaverse to make it easier, cheaper, and faster. But then how can we set up the international legal framework when it comes to the IP generated as a combination of generative AI and human creator? Because at this moment, worldwide, AI cannot become the IP owner or creator except for South Africa. So maybe there's more things we need to be doing when generative AI become the main engine to power the next generation of our metaverse. And the third point I want to highlight is when it comes to user interface, we all agree that maybe VR is truly immersive, but the user experience can be a little bit like not very intuitive. So if I wear like the handset for more than I would say 30 minutes, I start to get headache
Yes.
and feel a little bit dizzy. So people are very excited about Apple's like recent release of Vision Pro, and I think that will be a major achievement. But somebody else, like Elon Musk, he's really keen about the idea of brain-computer interface.
Right.
So having a little chip
Yeah.
in your brain,
Right.
and perhaps I prefer like a non-invasive one. And there has been lots of successful trials using that for like medical purpose to get people with mobility issues to be able to move again, to bring like sight back to like blind people, etc. But ultimately, it is possible in the future, maybe next 10, 20 years, to have that as the truly immersive, non-invasive user interface to allow the general public to interact within the metaverse environment to bring mass adoption. And my final point is about sustainability, because we all know any kind of digital technology, especially when we try to run in simulations and using large power of electricity, how we address the issue of like environment impacts. So maybe nuclear fusion can help. We had some major improvements since last year, so that's going to be very exciting. But also I start to notice that European Commission have been looking at how to put the data center into the outer space, or one US company is trying to put that into the moon, and they plan to do it before end of this year. So I guess there are lots of interesting solutions we can really put forward metaverse. And my last point, content computing, because we need computing power. I think Intel said that we need at least another 1,000 tons computing power to really allow us to unleash the full potential of the metaverse. Where can we get it? Content technology. So I guess if we have some challenges, perhaps there are more fundamental, like major solutions we can all coming together, whether it's ISO, it's ITU, IEEE, and many other standard organizations, public, private sector. We can all coming together to make this work to benefit all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow, what an amazing panel. Thank you so much for rounding that up. We talked about so many things. My head is swimming. I'm very excited. So I'd like everyone to join me in expressing, first of all, our deep gratitude to our panelists. Thank you for an interesting and insightful discussion. We established a general understanding of the metaverse. We talked about what it is and what it isn't. We opined on its relevance. In summary, we highlighted the transformative potential of virtual worlds, the need for standardization, social considerations. Thank you so much for that. Importance of inclusivity, accessibility. And of course, we emphasized what I will keep with me, which is interoperability, persistence, of course, from Neil. And I thought this was fantastic. As these digital environments continue to evolve, they will require our collaborative efforts to harness their benefits while addressing associated challenges. We thank you all for your time and attention. And now we will field some questions from our participants. So we are in the Q&A portion of this discussion. I want to start out with a few questions that we have gotten in from our participants. The first one, which I think is really interesting, and I talk about that all the time, are the dangers of metaverse addiction. So what are the dangers, and how do standards help with harassment in virtual worlds? What is the impact of generative AI in the metaverse? I hear this and I want to pick on you, Neil Trevitt. I don't know why, but this just feels like someplace where I should go to you. So Neil, maybe you can kick us off with an answer to this. What are the dangers of metaverse addiction, etc.?
I think addiction is one aspect of the larger question, which is so critical. Privacy, security, identity was the number one topic above any of the engineering interoperability topics when we first started the Metaverse Standards Forum. Out of all of the member organizations, that was the number one concern. And I think we have an opportunity to set things on the right track, kind of as Ian was saying earlier. We're all very aware right now of some of the downsides of social media and Web 2.0. And I think we can, if we're smart and we really apply ourselves, we can turn that awareness into really establishing legislation, best practices, self-governance, user norms to really try to help this new platform that we're all together building to be a safe and accessible place. We really need to do that because the risks are much higher with these technologies. XR and XR headset can gather so much personal information, way more than you clicking on a 2D web page. We have to protect that kind of sensitive information. And AI, deepfakes, if we're not very careful, we're not going to know very quickly what's real, what's not. We could be talking to digital AI agents that we don't know whether they're real or not, and they have our entire history. They're going to be super persuasive. You think your media stream today is persuasive. Wait till you start chatting to an AI agent that knows everything about you potentially. So we really need to put this at the top of our list. But I think it is more important than the engineering interoperability. We need to put this really as number one issue to address right now. We have a window of opportunity.
Yes, agreed. Ian, societal aspect here, so I have to come to you. What are your thoughts?
So it's interesting. The question is, do you know if you're engaging with AI and does it matter?
Right.
That is a really important question. So if you're engaging with a chatbot, we all know about the Turing test, and the Turing test has been blown out of the water. And the Turing test basically says if you can't tell that you're engaging with an AI, then you pass the Turing test. The Turing test has been blown out of the water during 2023. So we're in a brand new era where we need to think again about what are the rules of engagement around AI. There have been tests and tests and tests where people have asked questions, health questions, in an online forum of AI and of real doctors, and the AI has been consistently reported as being more accurate, more complete, and more empathetic, something which we thought we owned. So I think if you then wrap that up into a metaverse environment where you can't tell who you're engaging with, is it your wife, husband, brother, is it a random stranger, or is it an AI? I think we increasingly need to think through the assurance of what are the consequences of engaging with any digital presence. How do we explore the does it matter? What happens to my data? Who's responsible? What happens if something goes wrong? All of that becomes incredibly important when we can't verify who the thing is that we're talking to. So these are real issues, and I think it's whether metaverse exists in a meaningful sense or not. Increasingly, we have to understand when we take advice, when we take direction, when we take response from anything, being able to ascertain who's responsible, what happens if it goes wrong. These are the issues we need to think our way through, and they become writ large when it comes to metaverse.
Fantastic, thank you. Christina, what do you think?
I think it's really important we try to unite every single sectors and the different countries all joined up for this very important discussion. Because while we are talking about all these wonderful things metaverse can potentially bring to our society and our world, we shouldn't forget there are still 1/3 of the global population, nearly 3 billion of people. They are suffering from the digital divide and they are not even connected to the internet. So how can we ensure those people who are not left behind is also of critical issues for all of us? So I think there need to be more collaborations on that area. But of course, in lots of African continents, the way they get connected online is actually using mobile phones, using blockchain-related applications to actually allow them to have access to banking for the first time in their life. So maybe for the metaverse strategies developed for the developing country, they will in line with there are more, emerging like patterns of local socioeconomic situation and the need of their people. And I think that's also something we need to take into consideration.
Fantastic, thank you so much. Neil Robert, interested in seeing your perspective here, especially given from the engagement element, given that you take.
Yes.
into the space?
Yes, so we initiated something, and to answer maybe more generally, you're talking about harassment. It's all about education. You understand my point of view is it's great to focus on us, our generation, our parents, but we are boomers and we are not the generation who will use the metaverse more on daily basis. So let's admit it. My focus is today to build up the frame and the security for the younger generation. Recently, we won a Lyon in Cannes with a campaign called the Safe Zone with a telco named Orange, probably some of you know, where we set up safe zones in hundreds of maps all around virtual platforms from Fortnite to Roblox, Minecraft, and others, where within the experience, a player could end up in this safe zone to first protect from the gaming experience, because a lot of the gaming experience is about shooting at each other. But in the same time, they will win and earn experience points or V-Bucks or whatever rewards by getting educated about what cyber harassment is. So the main focus, of course, it's about property, identity, security. But over all of this, it's education, because if your younger generation doesn't know what cyber harassment is, if they don't realize they are being harassed because the behavior of the other player is not good, then you can obviously define every other criterias. If education is not there, the other criterias will not help. So I agree, it's important to understand what is anonyma or identity. Is it important that we connect these identities to something we can track and so on? But first of all, it's about the community, it's about the behavior. You know, within these spaces, communities, it's even more powerful than the security of the platform. You would
Right.
go in any forum and any platform where someone behaved wrongly, there is hundreds of people who ban this person because the community is stronger. And this is what we observe on daily basis in this kind of platform. So education is for me the number one.
I love that. So raising awareness and educating the public about potential benefits and risks of virtual worlds, I agree with you, is crucial for responsible adoption and use. So that I'm thinking in this next segment, I don't want to ask the question of any one of you. So I'm going to ask the question of all of you. What technologies then are we talking about? What technologies do you think will have the biggest impact? We heard earlier from Neil Trevitt about the importance of XR and AI. But from everyone else, and of course, Neil can jump in again, but what technologies are we talking about here? What do you think? Biggest impact? Does anyone want to take it, or should I point?
Sorry,
Point.
I'm just throw in one. It matters when it's a government-issued credential. It matters. So whether it's blockchain or whether it's a relational database, it matters. It becomes important when government says this is you. And when government says this is you and this equivalent exists in the digital world, that's really important. And being able to do that in a way which is assured, irrefutable, and undeniable is an important part of metaverse, coming from being a place where we play to a place where we exist and transact online.
Anyone else? So
I would echo that from Ian. I think out of the 5 technologies that we talked about earlier, in many ways, blockchain, decentralized identity, storage, trust is kind of the newest of those technologies. So it's not surprising to me that it's going through some learning. But I think what we imagine for the metaverse is not going to come true unless we do have some kind of decentralized trust. Otherwise, we're going to end up with the same kind of economic patterns that we've ended up with Web 2.0. So I would say that is a really critical piece that we need to evolve quickly.
okay, thank you for that. As we kind of close the Q&A here, I would like the panelists to just share one key takeaway, I always like that, or one piece of advice that you'd like to leave the participants with. Can I start with you, Neil Trevitt, as you were already talking?
Sure. So, as we've mentioned a couple of times, we often get asked the question, well, now AI is the hot new thing, so the metaverse is dead. I think that's the wrong question. It's not AI or the metaverse. AI is going to be foundational to the metaverse, and the metaverse is going to be the user interface into AI. So I think AI and the metaverse together are finally going to bring spatial computing into the way we interact with each other and our computing resources. And we live in a 3D world, so it's about time that our computing environments reflected that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Neil. I really appreciate all your thoughts here. Can we move on maybe to Neil Robert, actually? Any, just kind of one thought, comment, whatever you want to leave with the audience?
Yes, sometimes people, they are afraid when we're talking about the metaverse, and they're like, oh, I don't want to know, it's too scary. And I used to tell people, you're in or out, no matter, it will happen. So it's better to be in and bring something and add value to this system. And everyone here are probably already in the mindset of being in. And I appreciate all of you join this conversation, because I'm sure you will have a role to play in this evolution.
Fantastic. Thank you. Completely agree. So, Dr. Christina Yan Zhang.
Yes, madam. So I guess the way forward is really for different industries and organizations to identify effective new business model that can really help them to generate like income stream from the many different like elements of the metaverse ecosystem and combine that with really positive impacts. I was watching one of the major events from ITU yesterday talking about how different ICT technology has enabled the world population to actually move forward with more like progress on achieving the UN SDG. So we need to have successful business model to generate income, but at the same time we need to contribute to a positive way to the benefit of all humanities. So I think that's something we should all like work together on, and it will be very exciting.
Well said, well said. So I would love to then close these comments out with, last but not least, Ian.
So this has been a wonderful conversation, and we're celebrating the ISO general meeting here in Brisbane, Australia. But we are talking to ourselves. We are talking to ourselves. What we need to do is normalize conversation about standards. Every single one of us needs to normalize the fact that we are accessing incredibly powerful frameworks, thinking, international networks through the form of standards. Every single one of us needs to promote the fact that standards matter. Standards are not this esoteric, strange thing you just access, but are really important things that have been done and areas that we can increasingly get involved in. Standards matter.
What a good way to end that. Thank you so much. Standards do indeed matter. As we conclude today's discussion, let us please carry these takeaways with us. Let's carry them forward as guiding principles. The future of the virtual world is dynamic, it's promising, it's complex. And as people spend more time in this environment, their immersive nature may have implications that span widely, from new opportunities to interact, connect, experience, learn, and work, to challenges related to security, discrimination, addiction, misconduct, and abuse. The metaverse requires our collective commitment to shape it, and you have heard that from all the wonderful speakers today. And we want to shape this into a benefit for humanity while respecting the values of inclusivity, ethics, and technological progress. We can, in its nascent phase, play a role, all of us, as we look forward to witnessing the continued growth of virtual worlds and the positive impact they can have on all our lives. Thank you all for your participation and for your engagement in this vital conversation. Thank you so much again to the panelists. Take good care. Bye-bye.